Hello everyone. Let's start a new questions from image interpretation and digital image processing in remote sensing and GIS. Question. Explain all elements visual interpretation of image processing. Now we will see here what are the different elements of visual interpretations. In our daily life, we interpret many photos and images, but interpretations of aerial photographs and images are different because of the three important aspects. What are those three? First, the portrayal of features from an overhead, often unfamiliar perspective. Second, the frequent use of wavelengths outside of the visible portions of the spectrum. And third, the depletions of the Earth's surface at unfamiliar scales. And eight fundamental parameters or elements are used in interpretations of remote sensing images of photographs. These are tone or color, texture, size, shape, pattern, shadow, shite, associations. In some cases, a single such elements is alone sufficient to successful identification. In other, the use of several elements will be required. So this is the plottation of graph which shows what the primary degree of complexity is about like a tone and color. Secondary is a shape, size and texture. The tertiary is about pattern and shadows. Third is which is a higher is a sight and associations. First is a tone. Let's see tone and color. Tone is a relative brightness of a gray label on a black and white images or colored abscesses images. Tone is the measure of intensity of the reflector or emitted radiation of the objects of the terrain. Lower reflected objects appears relatively dark and higher reflected objects appear bright. Figure represents a band imaged in NRI requires of the electromagnetic spectrum. Reverse does not reflect any NRI regions, thus appears black, and the vegetation reflects much, thus appears bright. Our eyes can discriminate only 15 to 20 gray levels in the black and white photographs, while more than hundreds of color can be distinguished in a color photograph. In multispectral images, optimal three bands are used to generate color composite images. Mostly are like band 2, band 3 and band 4. Texture. We can identify with a texture. Next element is a texture. Texture refers to the frequency of tonal variation in an image. Texture is a produced by an aggregate unit of features, which may be too small to be clearly discriminated individually on the image. It depends on shape, size, pattern, shadow of terrain features. Texture is always a scale of resolutions depends on scale and resolutions. Same reflected objects maybe have different in textures, helping their identification. As an example, in a higher resolution image, grassland and tree crowns have similar tones, but grassland will have smoother textures compared to trees. Smoother texture refer to less tonal variations, and rough texture refers to abrupt tonal variations in an imaginary or a photograph. Next element is a size. Size of the object or image must be considered in the context of image scale or resolutions. It is important to assess the size of the target relative to other objects in the scale as well as absolute size to be aid in the interpretations of the target. A quick approximations of target size can make direct interruptions to be appropriate results more quickly. The most measured parameters are length, width, uh, parameters, areas, and occasionally volume. For example, if an interpreter had to distinguish zones of the land use and had identified an area with a number of buildings in it, large buildings such as factories and warehouses would suggest commercial properties. whereas small buildings would be indicate residential use. So we can identify through a size also. Next is a pattern. Next element is a pattern. Pattern refers to spatial arrangement of the objects. Objects, both natural and man-made, have a patterns which aids in their recognitions. The repetitions of certain general form of relationship in a tones and texture creates a patterns, which is characteristics of the elements in image interpretations. It could be easily understood that at the left bottom corner of image, it is a plantations where the trees are nearly equally spaced, whereas the upper right of the bottom right corner shows the natural vegetation. It's my mistake. I didn't have put a figure here, so definitely I will put figure during the material sending materials. Shapes. Okay. Next is a shape. Shape refer to general form, configurations, or outline of the individual objects. Shape is one of the most important single factor for recognizing object from an image. Generally, regular shapes, square, rectangles, circles are sign of man-made objects, building roads and cultivated fields, whereas irregular shapes with a no distinguished geometrical patterns are sign of natural environment like a river forest. In a general case, the misinterpretation in between roads and train lines sometimes happens. Road can be have sharp turns joints perpendicular, but rails lines does not have any sharp turns or any turns. From the shape of the following image, it can be easily said that the dark blue color object is a river. We are, we can see through eyes and we can identify the objects. Shadow. Shadow is an element. Shadow is a helpful element in image interpretations. It also creates difficulties for some objects in their identification in the image. Knowing the time of photography, we can estimate the solar illumination, which help in height estimations of the object. The outline or shape of a shadow affords an impressions of the profile view of the object, but object within the shadow becomes difficult to interpret. Shadow is also useful for enhancing or identifying topography and landforms, particularly in radar imagery. Next is association. Association refers to occurrence of certain features in relation to other objects in imagery. In urban area, a smooth vegetation pattern generally refers to playgrounds or grassland, not agricultural. So this is element of association. Next is a site. Site refers to topographic and geographic locations. It is also an important element in image interpretations when objects are not clearly identified using the uh, previous elements. A very high reflectance features in the Himalayan valley may be snow or cloud, but Kerala one cannot say it is as a snow. Okay, so these are the elements of the image interpretations. Thank you.